So, so there are basically, it's a very, very lengthy discussion, but I will be focusing on 3 or 4 points, which I think are the fundamental differences between the economy that Islam promotes and the capitalism that is currently practiced. So the first of that basic differences is that capitalism is secular, and therefore it is devoid of any discrete, consistent, and persistent moral and ethical principles. It's based on private ownership, and there could be demand of anything and supply of anything in terms of product and in terms of services, just absolutely anything. There are no moral implications. So, and because there are no such moral implications, it could result in things which are really, really bad. And because you don't really believe in an absolute truth, and everything's relative to the people who are in power, the people who have more money, who have more capital, who have more ownership, may influence societies and economies in ways which they can very well justify, right? The capitalism the way it is, because there's nothing absolute. Everything is relative. But the people who for the cultures and the people for whom that thing, that product, that service is unacceptable, say, they cannot really resist that. They cannot really resist the political or the cultural change that capitalism of that present scenario is trying to bring. On the other hand, Islam, I believe, is the only religion in the world which has preserved its original scripture in its very original form, and therefore the society and economy that Islam shapes is much more stable and consistent in its ethics and morals. So this, I think, is a very big fundamental difference between the two. And the second point is that Islam promotes asset-based financing, and in Islam, ideally, the medium of exchange, which is what we know as money, must be something of intrinsic value, like gold or silver, or it should be something which at least represents something of intrinsic value. So, like in the economy that we have today, anything can be money. Even if it doesn't even if it is backed by nothing. And all the currencies, all the fiat currencies that we have today are backed partly by dollar, which in turn is backed by nothing. So that's not how it works in Islam. Ideally. So in Islam, gold and silver are the preferred currency, or at least pieces of paper that actually represent actual gold and silver. Like, if it's a piece of paper, it should be backed by some gold, the way it was, before US left the gold standard. And apart from that, in Islam, profit is generated when a product, or when a service or a product of intrinsic value is exchanged for money which is in itself of intrinsic value. That is how profit is generated. So so there must be a product and a service, and it should be exchanged for money which in itself has some intrinsic value. Okay, so money in Islam, one unit of money is 100% equal to another unit of money of the same denomination. So just exchanging the same denomination of money in equal units, which is crazy, but that is what is interest, is prohibited. So in Islam, interest is prohibited, and the financial products are based on illiquid assets, which in turn creates more real assets. That's one of the reasons that in the 2008 financial crisis, when all the banks went really bad, but Islamic banks at that even in that time were quite stable because they're backed by real assets. So that's the second main difference, that the Islamic economy is backed by assets, whereas the current society is not backed by assets, which is a rising problem, and we can go on discussing about this, but I just want to touch the main points. So that's point number 2. Okay, now the third and the final point, at least for this video, and it's very, very interesting, so I want you to stick till the end of the video. So according to the capitalist theory, the person who provides the capital, the person who provides the money, is one factor of production in Islam. No, sorry, in the capitalistic theory, not in Islam. So the person who provides money is one factor, and the entrepreneur is another factor. Like, these are two separate things. Okay, so the entrepreneur, who is separate from the one providing the capital, takes the capital and invests it or starts a business, and the one who provides the capital gets his reward as interest, gets his profit, gets his reward as interest, irrespective of whether the business in which his money was invested has succeeded or failed. Okay, so the capital earns the profit, earns the interest, irrespective of the fact that the place where the money was invested has actually succeeded. Has that business, has that business increased? Has that business made any profit, or has that business been a total flop? It doesn't matter. The person who gave the money gets the profit as interest. It doesn't matter if the business failed or it succeeded. And the entrepreneur, on the other hand, gets his profit only after paying back the principal and the interest to the capital, and then what is remaining as surplus is his profit. So these are two different things. And in Islam, these are not so separate. This is very interesting. In Islam, these are not so separate. So the person who invests the money, the person who provides the capital to the entrepreneur or to a company or to whatever, he provides his money for investment, does not get a fixed interest rate. Rather, it's equity based. It's called musharaka, and it's also called mudaraba. So what happens is that if the business succeeds and the business gets a profit, a predetermined percentage of that profit will be given to the one who invested the capital. And if there is a loss, so similarly, he will also take burden of the loss. So the person who invests the money, the person who gives the capital, is not guaranteed profit, So he's part entrepreneur himself, So, and if you look at it from a philosophical side, it is actually quite interesting because, some people believe that God, people whom God has favored and people whom God actually loves, God gives him more money and more world. And obviously that's not true from an Islamic point of view, but people who tend to believe that if somebody's rich, if somebody's doing good, then in a way God has given them more privilege over the others. So, and this belief gets even worse with the current capitalistic scenario that if you're providing the capital, then you're not taking risk at all. You're just earning money because you have money, which is crazy. But in Islam, if you have money, then it doesn't just mean that you will earn money just because you have money. You have to take risk, just like there is probability of you gaining money because you invested money. Likewise, there is probability of you losing money because you invested money. So the people who have more money are, from that perspective, not so extra favored because they're taking risk and they're prone to such losses which are not so open to other people. They're open to extra special dangerous loss. So that just makes the world more fair for people who don't have that capital. Anyway, that's a different discussion altogether. So yeah, these were the 3 main points which I wanted to highlight. The difference between the Islamic economy and the current secular capitalistic economy. This is a very vast topic. I'm sure I've left out many points, but do point out your point of views in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to read them, to reply them, and to think over them. And thank you for watching.